It was 1992, and Hulk Hogan, the man who once stood as the immovable force and the unstoppable icon of professional wrestling, was unraveling beneath the surface. For nearly a decade, Hogan had carried the entire World Wrestling Federation on his massive shoulders. His face was everywhere. Action figures, lunchboxes, talk shows, Saturday morning cartoons. He was red and yellow, prayers and vitamins, the embodiment of American strength in the neon-fueled 80s. He slammed giants, conquered villains, and made kids believe that good always triumphed. But things were changing. Wrestling was entering a darker, more cynical era. The fans were growing up. Their cheers were thinning, their signs less innocent. The steroid scandal that had been bubbling under the surface for years was now boiling over, and Hogan, once untouchable, was suddenly at the very center of it. Vince McMahon, the visionary chairman who had built an empire around Hogan, now found himself under federal investigation. The United States government was closing in. Wrestlers were being called in to testify. The press was circling like vultures. McMahon needed to look clean, innocent, untainted, and that meant distancing himself from the one man whose body had become a walking billboard for the pharmaceutical rumors haunting the company, Hulk Hogan. When Hogan appeared on the Arsenio Hall show in July 1991, it was meant to be damage control, a calm, measured denial, a chance to reassure fans that Hulkamania wasn't built on needles and powders. Instead, it became a turning point. His answers were vague. He contradicted himself. He looked uncomfortable, off-brand. Everyone watching could tell this wasn't the invincible Hulk Hogan. This was Terry Bollea, the man behind the mask trying desperately to hold it all together. The public noticed. The locker room noticed. Vince noticed. By early 1992, Hogan was still the top draw, but it wasn't the same. Merch sales had dipped. Chants of steroids had begun echoing in arenas. Kids still loved him, but the magic was waning. And in boardrooms and backstage meetings, Vince was preparing the company for a world without him. Hogan didn't know it yet, but WrestleMania VIII would be his exit. He arrived at the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis that April already exhausted. Not physically, his body was as chiseled as ever, but mentally, emotionally. The backstage environment was colder now. Younger stars were circling like sharks. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. The Ultimate Warrior had come and gone, and now Sid Justice was being positioned as the next big monster. That night, Hogan was scheduled to face Sid in the main event, a classic hero versus villain match designed to send the fans home happy. But Vince changed the ending. Instead of Hogan winning clean and celebrating in the ring, the match would end in a disqualification. Then, as a surprise, the Ultimate Warrior would return to save Hogan from a 2-on-1 attack. It sounded fine on paper. A nice pop. A passing of the torch, maybe. But Hogan felt it. He wasn't being honored. He was being phased out. During the match, the crowd gave a mixed reaction. Some kids screamed. Some adults booed. The cheers weren't deafening like they once were. When Warrior's music hit, the pop was there. But it wasn't for Hogan. It was a distraction. A shift. And as Hogan stood in the ring, arms raised beside Warrior, he could feel it in his bones. This wasn't his house anymore. Backstage after the show, he didn't say a word. He didn't change out of his gear. He just sat in front of the mirror, staring at himself. The handlebar mustache, the yellow bandana, the tanned skin, the 24-inch pythons. He looked like Hulk Hogan, but he didn't feel like him. And he said softly to no one in particular, "I don't know who I am without this." Then he packed his bag and walked out of the building. No farewell to the boys in the locker room. No goodbye to Vince. He got into the car waiting for him and left wrestling behind. The official story was that he was taking a break. The real story, he was done. The months that followed were strange. He retreated into his home life, into being a husband, a father. But even that was unstable. His marriage was faltering. Rumors swirled. His name was still being dragged through the mud in the steroid trials. Some in the locker room whispered that he was a fraud. Others said he was a scapegoat, but none of it mattered. Wrestling had moved on. The WWF moved on. Hogan was yesterday's news. And for the first time in over a decade, Terry Bollea had no character to hide behind. But something kept burning in him. A question, a whisper, Not should I come back, but do I let it end like this? In 1994, the answer came in the form of a phone call. It was Eric Bischoff, the young, sharp, ambitious executive in charge of World Championship Wrestling, Vince's biggest rival. He offered Hogan everything the WWF wouldn't: money, power, a light schedule, creative control. At first, Hogan refused. He didn't trust the business anymore. He didn't trust the fans. But then he thought about Vince, about the way he was cut out, about being shoved aside, about the way the lights had dimmed on his legacy, and he said yes. Hogan debuted in WCW to massive fanfare. The nostalgia was real. The red and yellow returned, the American hero. But it didn't last. The crowd turned again, faster this time. They were tired of the act. They wanted edge, not ethics. Anti-heroes, not idols. So Hogan did something no one expected. He turned heel. He took everything the fans thought they knew and burned it to the ground, spray-painted the championship belt, mocked his old catchphrases, aligned with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. The New World Order was born, and Hollywood Hogan became the biggest villain in wrestling history. He reinvented himself, not just in the ring, but in life. It was bold, it was shocking, and it worked. The fans hated him so much, they couldn't stop watching. He was relevant again. And it all started the night he walked out of WrestleMania VIII, the night the cheers stopped, the night the mask cracked, the night Terry Bollea looked into the mirror and realized Hulk Hogan might be gone forever. But he found something else in that silence, something even more dangerous, something even more powerful. Not a hero, not a cartoon, a man, one who would rise again, not by being worshipped, but by being feared.